Hello everyone. In this video, we will look into the heartbeat vulnerability. First we will see an example, then we will go in detail, and then we will look into the definition, and then we will perform a lab. First we will see an example. Let's look at a scenario that a client is communicating with the server, but due to some interruption or change in connection, the client has to verify if the server is active or not. So for this, the client sent server a the client said to the server, send me this four-letter word if you are there, and send that four-letter word. So server got this and reply with a word. So client is able to verify that the server is active. But if a malicious actor, attacker, or somebody else send this message, then what he can do, he can send a message to the server stating that send me this 500 letter word if you are there, but only send 4 letter word. So server will send 500 letter word including word and other information that will be present in his garbage area or in his buffer. So now we will look into the detail of this heartbeat vulnerability. So first we will see what is heartbeat protocol. So this protocol is running on top of record layer protocol. So this is used for keeping the connection alive. Like we have other protocols like handshake protocol to make the connection or for the connection establishment. Similarly, there is heartbeat protocol to keep the connection alive even when no data is sent. Suppose a situation you are communicating with the server and for some time you go somewhere else or put the PC in sleep mode, or there may be some connection issues or connection quite often reset again and again. So it would be expensive for the server to set up this connection again and again. So to keep this connection alive, this heartbeat protocol is used. So what happened during this heartbeat protocol? Sender sends some random data and payload length. Like in this case, sender sent some random data like bird, and payload length is given as 4 letter. But in this case, random data is sent bird, but payload length is given 500 letter word. To know, so sender send this random data and payload length to the server to know if he is available, and server reply to the client, client can verify that server is available or not. But what reply should server send to the client so that server can know if the client is available or not? So for replying data, what server does is it copies the data sent by user into a variable, that is that random data that the client has sent. In this case, in the example, we can see that the bird is the random data which is copied by the server into a variable. But note here that length of data is not checked. While storing the data into variable, the server does not check the length of the data that he has received, and the server allocate memory to this variable, that is bird is stored into a variable. Let's suppose a equal to data. So server store that data into a variable and now allocate memory to store this variable, that is a variable. He has to allocate some memory to store this variable into his storage area and create a pointer bb to access this memory. So to access this variable, he will create a pointer bb. So he will allocate a memory using malloc function or other any method, and will create a pointer to access that memory location in his storage area. And while replying the server, but note here that while replying the server copies payload number of byte from the memory. He will not copy the length of data that he received from the memory, but will copy the payload number of byte that is specified by the client. So client has mentioned that mention the payload length in his packet. So server will copy that much byte from the from the memory using the pointer he has created earlier. So he has copied that data and sent that to the client. So problem is the length of data is not checked while storing. You can see that server copies data sent by user into variable. He has not verified the length of the data he has received. he has simply copied that variable and stored that in the memory, but not checked the length of the data. And while replying, it copies payload length of the data from the memory, assuming it is not changed. Server assumed that the payload length is he received from the data packet that the sender sent is accurate and copies that much length of data from the memory. But if the sender has sent a malicious packet mentioning more number of payload bytes than the uh, other other content present in the garbage area or the memory buffer will be sent to the attacker. So what attacker will do? Attacker attacker will send 64 kilobyte of payload length but only provide 8 bytes of data. So he has sent more number of payload length but provide a little data. So like in this case, he has provided only a 4-letter word but sent the payload length equal to 500. So in this case, attacker give payload length of 64 KB but provide only 8 bytes of data. So when server has to reply, so first what server will do, it will copy 8 bytes of data into a variable, like in this case a, and store that in memory. So he has copied 8 byte of data and store that data into the memory. But while replying, it will take into account the payload length, that is 64 KB. So he has stored only 8 byte of data in the memory but will copy 64 KB of data. So that much data will be copied from the memory. So whatever will be present in the memory after that data, 8 bytes of data will be copied. Now this data can be garbage data, but if you are unlucky, then it can include previous requests, passwords, security certificates, and that will be sent to the attacker, because in the memory buffer anything can be present which will be communicated in the previous request. So this happened in the Heartbleed vulnerability. So that's why its name is called Heartbeat vulnerability, because Heartbeat protocol is become beneficial to the attacker. So what is the definition of this? So this attack allow attacker to perform buffer overread attack, because attacker can read the buffer where they can read more information than they should be allowed to, and can use this information in order to read the entire content of the web server memory buffer. So he can read more content than he should be allowed to, and the data present in the memory buffer should be sent to the attacker. So now we will look into the lab step. So I have divided this lab step into the four steps. So first, using ping server IP, we will send a ping message to the server, so to ensure that the server is active or not. Then we will run a nmap scan to test if the server is vulnerable to heartbeat bug or not. So in the first case, we know if we have to ensure that server is active or if server is not active. In the second case, we are ensuring that the server, if the server is vulnerable to heartbleed attack or not. Now next, in third case, we will be using Metasploit tool to exploit this vulnerability. So first we will start Metasploit tool by entering MSF console. Then we will open Heartbleed exploit tool in Metasploit, and then we will set IP address of the remote host we want to exploit, that is by using the command set rhost, and then we will dump the content of the attack using set action dump, and then we will click on type exploit to exploit the server, and then we can see that it dumped the full content of the server memory buffer. So now we will go into the lab and perform this attack. So now we will perform the lab step. So first we will ping the server IP to know if the server is active or not. So what command we have to do? We have mentioned here ping server IP. So in this case server IP is 192.168.10.25. So it is sending reply, you can see, and now we can see here that 6 packet transmitted, 6 packet received. So we have ensured that the server is active. So now we can perform the attack. Now using this command nmap minus port 43 minus script ssl, we will know if the server is vulnerable to heartbleed bug or not. So we will write this command nmap minus port 443 minus script SSL Heartbleed server IP. SSL Heartbleed. Now we will mention here the server IP, which is 192.168.10.25. So is it correct? Yes. No. Now it will do nmap scan, and here we can see that the server is vulnerable to Heartbleed bug. So we can perform our attack. Now what is the next step in the lab? We will be using Metasploit, so we will enter MSF console. So here it is taking time to load the Metasploit tool. It is starting Metasploit tool. You can see. Starting Metasploit framework console. So here it is starting the Metasploit tool. Now we will use the open Heartbleed exploit tool. We will open Heartbleed exploit tool to exploit the Heartbleed vulnerability. So for that we will use auxiliary scanner SSL open Heartbleed. SSL open SSL Heartbleed. So now Heartbleed exploit tool will be open. You can see that. Now we will set the we will see the various actions they are present. We will see various option and action which are present to exploit this. So we will show options. Here you can see that various options are present, but we will use rhost, and similarly by typing show action we can see various actions which are present. So we will set rhost server IP 192.168.10.25. So our host will be set to the server which we will want to exploit. We will set the IP of that server. Now we will set action to the dump. So to collect all the content, to collect the dump content, we will set that action. Set verbose true. So that all data will come into our server, and then we will click on exploit to do the attack. Now here you can see that we get a lot of data. So here it is showing mainly garbage data, but if you perform on a legitimate server and if you are lucky, you can get passwords or other kind of data that is stored in the buffer. So thank you.